Okay, good morning, class. This is our recording for the basic principles of assessment. Okay, so when you look for sources for the basic principles of assessment, you'll see different principles online. Okay, so for this module, we're going to look at the principles of assessment as suggested by Choo in a 2014 article. Okay, so that is what you're seeing on your screen right now, the framework, or basically the 7 basic principles of assessments. Let's begin with reliability. Okay, so according to Brown, or as cited by Choo in 2014, an assessment tool is reliable if it has this following conditions. Okay, number one is that a test is reliable if a student tends to score a similar score no matter when you administer the particular test. Okay? So, pag nag-administer ka ng June 1 at nakakuha ng 5 yung estudyante, asahan mo ng mga June 17, 5 pa din yung nakuha niya, then the test is most likely reliable. Okay? Next is to give clear instructions or directions for scoring or evaluation. Okay? So, a test can be fun if you give complicated directions, but of course, you want it to be reliable. You want your students to simply focus not on the directions, but focus on solving the items. So in that regard, you definitely want to give simpler instructions. Okay? In the same manner, yung paggamit ng rubrics, okay, sa class, pag hindi pa po maalala yung rubric, ito po yung gagawa kayo ng mga activities. Okay, mga roleplay, bibigyan kayo ng rubric, yung parang 40% for content, 50% for presentation, 10% for originality. Okay, those are, that's an example of a very basic rubric. Okay, so dapat meron din tayong ganun. Paggagamit tayo ng mga tinatawag na subjective tests or mga performance tasks. Okay, and of course, consistent dapat yung application ng rubric na yan. Kapag ginamit mo siya kay student 1, dapat gagamitin mo na siya on the entire class. Hindi gagawa ka ng special rubric para kay student 2, etc., etc. And of course, it contains items or tasks that are unambiguous. Okay? For example, you have the test item, the Philippine national hero is blank. Okay? Again, the Philippine national hero is blank. Now, that item in itself is very ambiguous. Kasi if I say the Philippine national hero is dead, I'm still correct. Okay? But if I say the Philippine national hero is named Jose Rizal, this is still correct. The Philippine national hero was shot in Bagong Bayan. It's still correct. There are many answers and many interpretations that are possible if ambiguous yung iyong test item. So it's better to avoid those types of test items because they are not reliable. Okay? Choo further added that tools should be stable and consistent. Okay, so makikita niyo lagi dito yung word na consistent, stable, dependable, and etc. Okay, now, of course, there are many ways to establish the reliability of a particular test. Okay, we will have a module for that. But for now, we're going to talk about the factors that affect the reliability of your assessment. Okay, so here are the factors as suggested by Choo in 2014. Nagbigay siya ng 5 factors dyan. Okay, the first factor is the test factor. Okay, or basically the factors that are within the test themselves. Okay, so for example, sabi ni Choo, pag mas mahaba yung test items mo, pag mas marami ang test items mo, generally mas reliable yung iyong test. Okay, so how does that work? Okay, pag 1 to 10 yung isang quiz mo, right? Tapos nanghula ng 5 yung bata. Okay, 5 out of 10 hinulaan niya. Okay, so that means 50% of your score is very unreliable kasi hinulaan lang yun. However, let's contextualize that into an exam na merong 50 items. Okay? Nanghula ng 5 din yung bata. But, nung nanghula siya ng 5, 50 test items yun, 10% lang yung magiging inconsistent sa iyong results. Kasi, 5 is only 10% of 50. compared sa naunang example kanina, na 5 out of 10 hinulaan, napakalaking percent yung nawawala sa panghuhula. So, yun yung ibig sabihin na longer tests are generally more reliable. Okay? So, the second outline talks about the guessing of answers. Yan yung nasabi ko kanina. Okay? And pangatlo, objective tests are more reliable. Okay? There are usually two types of tests. Meron kang objective and subjective tests. Objective tests are tests na iisa or very limited lang yung mga tamang sagot. Ang example niyan ay yung simple true or false, matching type, and then multiple choice. Okay? Kasi doon, iisa at isa lang yung tamang sagot. Pag si letter A lang yung tamang sagot, kahit ano pang ibang letter yung isagot mo, mali na agad yun. Those are objective tests. When you say subjective tests, these are tests na kailangan mo pang basahin, kailangan mo pang i-scrutinize para mabigyan ng grade. Ang example nito ay essay. Kasi wala namang isa at isang tamang sagot sa isang essay test. Okay, so those are that's an example of a subjective test. Another example would be yung mga performance task na pinapagawa sa inyo. Sa PE, for example, that's also a subjective test. Okay? So, not all tests that are reliable may be valid. Okay? Now, validity is another criteria. It's another principle when it comes to our test reliability. Okay? So, those are two interconnected ideas, reliability and validity. But what you need to remember is this. If your test is reliable, it does not always mean that it's valid. But if your test is valid, most likely it is also reliable. Okay? So, in that case, why would you need to establish reliability? Okay? Again, hindi porket yung general rule, hindi yun yung overall rule. Okay? Especially when it comes to things like test analysis. Okay? When it comes to things like testing your test instruments. Okay? They are separate but still connected ideas. Okay? Next, test items created from the same subject matter still has variability. What this means is kapag yung topic mo ay, for example, topic lang sa Philippine history during the Spanish era. Okay? Pag gumawa ka ng test items doon nung June, and then biglang dumating yung August, gagawa ka din ulit ng mga test items. Chances are, yung test items na nagawa mo ng June ay iba sa test items na gagawin mo or na magagawa mo sa August. Okay? Kahit parehong Philippine history during the Spanish era yung iyong subject matter. Okay? So that is inherent sa paggawa natin ng test items. Okay? Next, you have a teacher and student factor. Okay? So, one of the things na pinakamahirap gawin is mag-exam habang inaantok. Okay? A lot of us review before doing the exam. Okay? Yung iba nagpupuyat pa para lang sabihin makapag-review. Tapos pagpasok sa school, puyat naman, pagod naman. Okay? Now, if that happened to you, chances are, hindi kayo nakafocus sa inyong exam. Okay? So, that tiredness, okay, yung drowsiness, yung pagiging antukin dahil sa kakulangan ng tulog, that's a student factor that can definitely affect your scores. Okay? So, going to student factors pa rin, motivation can also affect your scores, obviously. If you are motivated to answer, chances are, mas mataas yung makukuha mong scores. Okay? And then, we have teacher factor. Okay? So, if your teacher, for example, pumasok sa school, hindi na sabihin ng good morning ng bebe niya. Okay? Masama yung mood. Tapos bigla siya nagpa-recite. Okay? Dahil masama mood niya, ayaw niya magbigay ng mataas na grade. Okay? So, o di kayo lahat sa pang-umaga, mababa ng grades ninyo. Tapos tanghali, ay, na good morning na yung bebe niya. Okay? Bandang hapon, nagpa-quiz din siya sa ibang section. Tinanong niyo ibang section, ay, ano mga score na nakuha niyo? Ay, naka 8/10 kami, naka 9/10. Tapos sa section niyo, mataas na yung 5. Diba? Kahit pareho lang yung skills ninyo. That is a teacher factor. Okay? So kayo, if you become future teachers, as much as possible, try not to let your mood change your judgment. Okay? Because those teacher factors will definitely have negative effects if you want to establish reliability. Okay? Kasi nga, reliability, throughout time, gusto mo makita yung development ng bata. So, pag reliable test mo, accurate yung makikita mong image ng development. Pero kapag hindi reliable yung test mo, ibig sabihin, inaccurate yung makukuha mong image of development. Okay? Next, you have environmental factors. Oh my goodness. Okay? Imagine magte-test ka sa isang classroom. Sa gilid, maingay. May mga nagmumotor na parang AoL1. Okay? Ang iingay ng mga tambutso. Tapos sa CR ninyo, may nag-CR hindi binuhusan. Okay? And then, sa ibang gilid naman, naglalakad yung mga estudyante, nagbubulyawan. Okay? Nagsasaya kasi wala daw pasok. Okay? And those environmental factors will definitely distract the test takers. Okay? Can you imagine also taking an exam sa isang classroom na hanggang tuhod yung baha? Of course not. Okay? It's not conducive for examination purposes because instead of focusing on the exam, nadi-distract sila, nawawala yung kanilang train of thought. Okay? So, whenever we try to make assessments, dapat we want to keep our environment conducive for test taking. Okay? Next, number 4 is test administration. Ito na rin nasabi ko kanina. Pag sobrang complicated, yung mga binigay na instruction is nakaka-distract lamang. Okay? Halimbawa, true or false yung binigay, tapos ang binigay na instruction, isulat ang pangalan ni crush kapag the statement is true. Isulat ang pangalan ng kalaban if the statement is false. Eh, paano pag marami kang crush, tapos marami ka din kalaban? Diba? And iisipin mo pa yun ang hassle. Okay? Instead of focusing your mental processes on the items, napupunta siya sa instruction. So, as much as possible, doon lang tayo sa simple instructions. Okay? One of the ways, for example, yung sa multiple choice, encircle the answer of your choice. Okay? That's an easy direction. True or false? Write an X if the statement is false. Write a circle if the statement is true. Okay? Very simple instruction. Okay? Ngayon nga, hindi na maganda isulat yung true or false. Kasi 4 or 5 letter word yun. Okay? Yung konting oras na nag-google sa pagsusulat, maaaring mas pasimplihin pa. Okay? And then number 5, we have marking factors. Okay? Humans provide variability and error in scoring. Okay? So this happens, for example, kapag meron ng mga teaching demonstrations. Okay? Pag mag-final demo kayo sa practice teaching, hindi lang iisa yung mag-grade sa inyo. Okay? That is an entire panel of expert teachers. Okay? Now, these expert teachers will give you different scores, obviously. Pag 3.5 ang binigay ni teacher 1, aasahan mo na baka hindi 3.5 yung ibibigay ni teacher 2. Okay? So, in order to reduce the variability, para mabawasan yung pagkakaiba-iba ng scores, one way to do that is to make in a very strict or a very detailed rubrics para kahit papano magkakalapit-lapit yung mga scores. Okay? Those are marking factors. Again, this is a factor that comes from having different evaluators sa iisang performance. Okay? And we move on to the next principle, which is the principle of validity. Okay? Sabi dito, validity is a characteristic that refers to the appropriateness of the utilization of the test and is also concerned with the legitimacy of the results of the test. Okay? What you need to remember here is your assessment items should contain items connected with your objective. For example, you want to know if your students know how to add and subtract similar fractions. Okay? So yung test mo, it should contain questions on adding and subtracting fractions. Hindi dapat siya maglalagay ng mga questions that focus on multiplying and dividing fractions. Hindi din dapat siya maglalagay ng mga questions that focuses on geometry. And obviously, hindi siya maglalagay doon ng what is the definition of a fraction. Because those questions are not valid. Hindi yon yung pinaka-main objective mo. Kahit close pa siya sa topic, pag hindi siya yung main objective, hindi siya valid. Okay? Now, there are different types of validity then. However, that is for our next modules. Hindi pa naman siya sa ngayon. Kasi medyo marami-rami yun and medyo complicated din yung mga ibig sabihin nila. Okay? For now, let's move on to authenticity. So when you say authenticity, this is when your assessment mirrors real-world tasks. Okay? So dapat daw yung assessment mo, sabi dito sa second paragraph, it should be involving the application of real-life knowledge in real-world situations, okay, allowing students to problem solve, to hypothesize, and to create new products. Okay? So, what does that mean? Okay? It means that when you say authentic, dapat kung ano yung aasahan nila in their future task, in their future career, yun din yung pagbabasihan mo ng iyong assessment. Okay? So, you will become future teachers. Okay? Ang mga asahan sa inyo is marunong dapat kayong gumawa ng forms, marunong kayong mag-Microsoft Office, marunong kayong gumawa ng lesson plan, gumawa ng test papers. So, since yun yung mga assumptions, yun yung mga expectations sa inyo, yun din yung mga gagawin naming assessment. Pinapagawa kayo ng lesson plan. In this course, pagagawin kayo ng test items. Okay? So, those assessments mirror the real-world expectations in your future career. That's what it means when we say authentic. And of course, magagamit ninyo yung mga skills ninyo, particularly yung mga higher order thinking skills, which we will discuss in a later module. Opo, meron pa kasing higher thinking, meron ding lower thinking. Next modules natin pag-uusapan iyon. Okay? So, a test is authentic if ganito daw, according to Choo. Pakibasa na lang po yan. Ano pa yung hindi natin kaya intindihin kaya? Okay? So, ito, provides thematic organization. Okay? When you say thematic organization, your assessment, okay? Kasi sabi nga ng definition natin, assessment is a series of measures. So, yung series ng measures na to, dapat may isang tema lang sila na sinusundan. Sa atin, lahat ng tema natin nakafocus lang sa assessment. Walang maliligaw na dancing dyan. Walang maliligaw na role-playing session dyan. Because we're making assessment test items, not any other things. Okay? So, we have objectivity. Now, I've told you earlier, there are two types of tests, objective tests and subjective tests. When we say objectivity, dapat yung scores ng equally competent students ay dapat halos pareho. Okay? Kung magaling si student A at magaling din si student B, dapat kahit pa paano magkakalapit yung scores nila. Okay? That is being objective. Pag objective test, madali lang ma-establish yan. Okay? Pag tama ni A at tama rin ni B, pareho sila na makukuhang score. Okay? Nagkakaroon tayo ng problema dito kapag subjective test yung ginamit natin. Okay? Pag magaling sumayaw si A at magaling din sumayaw si B, bakit kaya si A naka-80 at si B naka-87? Pareho naman sila magaling sumayaw. Kasi meron po tayong mga iba-ibang mga factors that affected the reliability. And yung test natin in itself, hindi siya objective test. It is a performance test, which is an example of a subjective test. Okay? So, how do you do this? Pag objective test yung pinakagawa mo, no problem with this. Pag subjective test, ang kailangan mong gawin ay gumawa ng maayos na rubric. Para kahit may konting pagkakaiba, yung pagkakaiba na yun ay minimal lang. Okay? So, ito rin in-explain ko actually. Okay? Next, we have practicality. Okay? Now, sa panahon ngayon, okay, when you say practicality, dapat yung assessment method mo should not exceed the resources na gagamitin mo. Okay, sabi ni Choo dito, this is the logistical, down-to-earth administrative issues involved in making, giving, and scoring a test instrument. Okay? So for example, ganito lang yan. Class, sa subject na Assessment of Learning 1, I have about 400 students. Okay? Sa 400 na students na yon, imagine, if every quiz, magpapa-essay ako. Every week, mag-check ako ng 400 essays. No way. That is not practical because it will consume a lot of my time and of course effort just to check an essay type test. So, ang gagawin ko, the practical way is to just make an objective test na sasagutan ninyo. Okay? Okay, clue na yan sa inyo. Hindi po tayo magpapa-essay sa subject na ito. Okay? Another definition is, this refers to the cost, the amount of time it takes to administer and construct, kung gaano siya kadali i-score, at kung gaano kadali siyang i-interpret. Okay? So, actually, merong isa dito sinasabi na test is a practical if it follows this particular descriptions. Okay? So, ano ba itong mga descriptions na to? Okay? Sabi ni Choo, it should stay within the budgetary limit. Okay? So, ano ba yung budgetary limit? Usually, nagagaling po yan sa Nagagaling po yan sa administration. Okay? Minsan, nagagaling din sa mga bata. Okay? Ngayon kasi, some instructors, binibigyan sila ng school ng mga Xerox copy ng mga test nila. Kung magpapa-pen and paper test sila. Okay? That's okay. Kasi, bigay ng school yan. However, what happens kung napakarami nyo na kasi ngayon? Okay? What happens if the instructor, imagine, 5 pages yung exam niya. Tapos meron siyang 1,000 students. Ilan yun? 5,000 pages iyon. Okay? Ilan teachers kaya yun? Ilang subject? So, medyo problematic. Magiging problematic sa budget kapag lagi nating kapag lumampas yun. Okay? Can be completed by the test taker within the appropriate time frame. Okay? Hindi ka pwede magpa-exam ng 1 to 100 tapos sabi mo, finish it within 20 minutes. Hindi ka practical. Okay? Lalo na kapag mga mahihirap yung mga test items mo doon. Okay? Next is clear directions for administration. Okay? Malinaw yung directions at madali lang intindihin yung gagawin. Okay? Does not exceed available material resource. Okay? So, if you are in a small school, for example, very limited yung budget ng school. Sabi nila, okay, sa isang teacher, meron lang tayong nakaalat na 200 coupon bond. Okay? Tapos, magpapatest ka. Yung test mo, 5 pages. Tapos, ang estudyante mo, mga 100. Kukunti lang, 100 students, pero 5 pages. Tapos, 250 lang yung budget mo. So, hindi practical yon. Okay? And of course, considers the time and effort involved in both design and scoring. Okay? So, yun po yung kailangan lagi nating i-consider, the time and effort. Okay? Kung medyo low or kung medyo low level yung objective mo, design should be simple. Okay? Huwag mong gawing complex kasi very low or very simple yung iyong objective. Okay? That is practicality. Next, we have interpretability. Okay? Now, this process requires the interpreter to have knowledge, etc., etc. Okay. Ganito lang naman po iyon. If I am going to evaluate you in your majors, for example, ang pwede ko lang evaluate ay kung saan ako merong alam. Okay? I am a math major, so obviously, hindi ko pwedeng gradean yung mga ginagawang tula ng mga Filipino major. Okay? Hindi ko pwedeng evaluate yung analysis paper ng English majors on the Canterbury Tales. Okay? Because I am not an expert in that field. Pero, pwede kong i-check yung solution ng mga math majors. Pwede kong tignan yung kanilang mga proofs sa solving problem. Okay? Obviously, hindi ko rin pwedeng tignan kung feasible ba yung investigatory project suggestion ng mga science major. Kasi hindi rin naman ako science major. Doon lang ako sa math. Okay? But for subjects that focuses on education, okay, probably I can grade them because we are education majors as well. Okay? So again, kung ano lang yung alam natin, kung ano lang yung field natin, yun lang din, of course, yung kaya nating i-evaluate. Okay? That is interpretability, meaning yung mga people mong mag-evaluate ng gawa ng mga bata ay experts dapat sa field na iyon. Okay? Next, we have washback effect. Now, this is the long-term effect of tests to your students. Okay? Sa karamihan sa inyo, na mention ko yung lifelong learning sa functions of education on how assessment can change the learning habits of your learners. Okay? That change is considered as a washback effect. Okay? Halimbawa, nagpa-test ka sa bata. Nakita ng bata maganda yung score niya. Buong araw, masaya na siya. Kinabukasan, gusto niya ulit pumasok sa klase mo. Okay? That's an example of a positive washback effect. Now, alternatively, pag mababa score ng bata na malulungkot siya, baka malulungkot siya, di ba? That is problematic. Kasi pag nalungkot siya, baka mawalan siya ng motivation, ayaw niyang pumasok, maging absenteeism, maging problem student na siya. Okay? That is a negative washback effect. Okay? So, yun daw yung mga kailangan natin i-consider. So, how do we make a positive washback effect? Okay, number one, positively influence how the instruction works. Okay? So, pag teacher ka, usually, you want to keep your discussion lively. Okay? Ang boring ng teacher na monotonous magsalita. Yung teacher na bored yung binabasa. Okay? Hindi maganda yung effect na yon kasi pag nagpa-test siya, walang natutunan yung mga bata. Mababa yung scores. Ayaw na rin. Next, offers the learners a chance to adequately prepare. Kaya iniiwasan natin ang mga surprise quiz. Bakit? Walang preparation yung learners. Okay? It creates a stigma na quizzes are meant to be surprised, but it's not. Okay? Dapat merong preparation yung mga learners. Ito importante, giving feedback. Okay? Your learners should know kung saan sila nagkamali at kung saan sila nakakuha ng mga tamang sagot para alam nila kung saan ang i-improve nila. Ang hirap nun, sasabihin sa'yo na mali ka tapos hindi mo naman alam kung saan ka nagkamali. Naglalaro lang kayo ng mind games. Okay? Huwag pong ganon. Toxic po iyon. Okay? Next, prepare conditions for peak performance of learners. How do you do this? Okay? Sabi ko kanina, sa reliability, maraming factors na nakaka-affect. One example is yung, nakaka-affect ng reliability. One of these factors is yung environmental factors. Okay? So, pag nakita mo yung classroom, ang gulo-gulo, okay? May crack sa pader. Okay? Yung banyo, hindi malinis, nangangamoy. Tapos, basa yung floor kasi kakatapos ng bagyo. Hindi po maganda yung conditions na iyon. Kasi madidistract yung mga learners. Kaya hindi ka magpapaquiz, aayusin nyo muna. Okay? Para merong positive washback effect. Next, focus on formative rather than summative. Pag-usapan natin to sa types of assessment. But just to give you a brief idea, hindi dapat tayo nakafocus sa pagkuha ng scores ng bata. Dapat daw nakafocus tayo sa pag-alam ng mga pagkukulang sa learning ng bata. Okay? Yun yung pinaka-idea dyan sa statement na yan. Hindi ka mag-focus sa pagbibigay ng score, pagbibigay ng grade. Nakafocus ka dapat sa pag-correct ng learning. Okay? Remember, sa pagkasabi ko doon, I did not even mention grades on the second part. Because formative assessment, o yung formative na nakalagay dyan, our main goal is to form learning, not to give measurement to that said learning. Okay? Now, a washback effect can be done in a larger scale. Okay? So, for example, nagpa-assessment yung isang review center, titignan nila kung saan mahina yung mga estudyante. And of course, pag nakita nila kung saan mahina yung estudyante, doon sila magpuput ng mas maraming effort para ma-address yung kahinaan na iyon. Okay? Ginagawa rin po natin yun sa ating institution. Meron pong mga diagnostic test yung iba sa inyo, tsaka yung mga higher years ninyo. Okay? Because we want to catch up on the lessons na naiwanan nila para mabago yung teaching. Instead of focusing on the general area, we focus on a more specific area na talagang pinakamahina kayo. That's also a watchback effect. Ang epekto ng testing, hindi lang sa estudyante, hindi lang sa isang teacher, kundi sa functions ng entire education. Okay? So again, those are the 7 basic principles of assessment. Okay? We begin from reliability, talking about the consistency of the scores. Validity, meaning yung mga test items mo ay connected dapat sa iyong objectives. Authentic, meaning kung ano inaasahan mo na mangyayari ay na nangyayari at mangyayari sa real world, yun yung i-connect mo sa assessment. Objectivity is paggamit ng objective test or paggamit ng maayos na rubric para sa subjective tests. Practicality is you have to take note of the resources that you will use. Hindi lang ikaw resources that you and your test takers will use, okay, for taking and checking and recording the test. Pag masyado magastos for a very simple task, that is not practical. Interpretability means dapat yung mga scorers mo, yung mga mag-evaluate sa mga learners mo, dapat knowledgeable. Obviously, that goes for you. So, hindi pa pwede na magiging teacher tayo tapos wala tayong kaalam-alam sa field natin. Okay? Huwag tong ganon. We are here to study not just how to teach, but also what to teach. Okay? Okay, ako po, I'm a math major. You can expect me to know a lot of things about mathematics. You will become English majors, Filipino, Soxted, math. I will expect that you know a lot about these fields. Kasi that is your major. And you will use that knowledge to interpret the scores of your learners. And finally, watchback effect. Okay, the long-term effects of assessment to a student, whether it be physical effects, emotional effects, cognitive effects, okay? The effects to the students, effects to the teachers, kung paano nila babaguhin yung kanilang pagtuturo, and effects to the institution. Kung paano at saan magpo-focus yung mga institution on improving the learning of the learners. So those are the 7 basic principles of assessment according to Choo in 2014. Okay? So this is the end of this particular lesson. Okay, of course, hindi lang po ito yung video. But for now, since natapos yung panoorin, take a break and, of course, get ready for the next part of the discussion. Okay, that is all for this recording. I'll see you in a bit. Bye!